South.
Come on, this is not accidental. If it is, then there is a level of incompetence that will make the history books.
Count every vote is nothing more than a trick to make people think evil Republicans are not counting every vote.
The Camp Fire in Northern California, now the deadliest and most destructive wildfire in state history.
Nearly 6,500 homes have been destroyed. 42 people have died.
Law enforcement has begun to prepare for the approaching migrant caravan.
We have hardened the ports of entry, where if people are showing up at our borders, they will not enter illegally.
Democrats not even in control of the House yet, already promising an investigation overload into the Trump administration.
They want to investigate, but the American people want them to legislate.
I feel the need for speed.
Actor Tom Cruise wants to buzz the tower on his own. The Top Gun star will fly a plane in the upcoming sequel.
Good girl.
Into his stardom, as did Sylvester Stallone came into their stardom. What do they have in common? They both insisted on actually doing these stunts themselves. You know, Stallone learned to box, was getting punched in the face, ribs broken. Those were the days when actors got hurt for the role.
Jillian did a story, if you're just waking up, Jillian did a story about how Tom Cruise, for the new Top Gun movie, he wants to learn to fly a plane, so they're delaying the movie filming because he wants to go and learn to do that, and he does his own stunts a lot of times.
Didn't he hang on a wing of a plane?
Yes, he did.
On the side of the airplane. He does all those things.
Didn't he get hurt? He got hurt. Yeah.
He's very, he wants it to look real and be real. So
he has a reputation of, when he's in a crowd, he goes and he shakes hands with everyone, gives everyone autographs when they come to a movie premiere, doesn't leave until he's finished doing that and saying hey to everyone who supports his career. He does his own stunts. He comes super early. He stays late.
There you go.
Hard worker.
If I was to do that, I'd be all green screen. There you go. Well, welcome once again to hour 2 of Inside the Actors Studio.
All right, let's talk about what's happening down in Florida.
Good
this
idea.
is big news. The recount. This morning, more ballot drama brewing in the Sunshine State.
Statewide recounting is in full swing almost everywhere, but officials in Florida's largest counties are scrambling to meet Thursday's deadline. Griff Jenkins does all his own stunts. This time he just has to stay indoors and tell us what's happening. Broward County Office of Elections, where we find Griff. Griff, last night they didn't even count. They just pulled apart staples, right?
Listen, guys, here's what's going on. They haven't even started the actual recount and tabulation, but look in the window. Fear not. They say they're going to get it done. A little bit of breaking news here. Now, where they are in this page separation is they're at the letter Y, the end of the alphabet on the electoral day votes. They have one more group to do. That's the vote by mail. They say there's 189,000 of those, and that separation will take until tonight before they begin the actual recount. But the Director of Planning and Development here, Joe D'Alessandro, just told me that it'll only take 15 total hours when they do the actual recount. They spent time on the front end to save time on the back end. That's why it's only going to take 15 hours for the actual tabulation, and they will meet that deadline, according to their projections, of the vote recount. Now, yesterday, we did have a very interesting moment when the election supervisor here, Dr. Brenda Snipes, came out, addressed us in the room here with the media about accusations of failing to comply with Florida law on multiple accounts. Here's what she had to say.
Good morning. Lawsuits as they are written certainly cast aspersions on my character. I've worked here for about 15 years, and I have to say this is the first time that this office or I have been under such attacks. So if we make mistakes, we own mistakes.
Meanwhile, the candidates, Senator Nelson and Governor Scott, just going after each other. Listen to this.
Scott cannot oversee this process in a fair and impartial way, and thus he should remove himself from any role in the recount process.
My goal is that we follow the law. We know Brenda Snipes mixed illegal ballots with legal ballots. We know they've not let party officials in. The courts have said follow the law.
Now, in neighboring Palm Beach County, the supervisor there still saying she finds it impossible to meet Thursday's deadline. Either way, all the attorneys believe we're headed for a hand recount that will begin Thursday, guys.
All right. Thank you very much, Griff. Also, when they're looking at some of these contested ballots, they're trying to figure out voter intent. And apparently they're noticing a trend, according to the Palm Beach Post. Apparently some voters who are voting for governor when choosing between Ron DeSantis and Darcy Richardson, who is running on the Reform Party, apparently they confused REF. They saw ref, as in Reform Party, and thought it was REP for Republican. And so they scribbled it out and they circled something. And so some of them are abundantly clear what the person was trying to do, but some of them, they're trying to figure out what was the person who had the marker thinking when they marked it.
Listen, if you screw up the ballot, it shouldn't count. I mean, you got to get it down. I mean, just take a second, look at the ballot. And if Florida...
Go slowly,
ask for a new ballot.
Yeah. Ask for a new ballot. And by the way, how stupid is it that they put the Senate race at the bottom to the left and put the governor's race up here? So they didn't even, they had an atypical ballot to begin with in Broward County.
That's why people didn't see the governor's race. They voted for the senator and didn't vote for the governor.
Or they voted for the governor, not the senator.
Because it was underneath the instructions and a lot of people didn't realize it. But that falls on the Board of Supervisors for that county because they're the ones who lay out the ballot.
But what's the most bizarre thing is now they want to change the rules. There were rules set in place. If you were an absentee ballot, you had to get it in by 7 o'clock on Tuesday. If you didn't, it doesn't count. And now Mark Elias, the attorney for Bill Nelson, is saying, no, we want all of them to count. That sounds great, but you can't change the rules after the game's played.
Well, the law is in Florida, if you are serving overseas or if you're overseas, and
then it counts after.
You can send it in and they will accept it up to 10 days, which would be a couple more days on the clock. But now what they're suggesting is let's go ahead and have that apply to all mail-in ballots, not just the ones from overseas.
That's fine for the next election, but you
not
can't change the laws. So this is the tweet that Mark Elias, who's the attorney for Bill Nelson, who is down by how many votes? Like 12 to 13,000 votes. His attorney says, breaking, no Floridian should have their rightful vote denied because of mail post office delays. We are suing to protect these ballots. Hashtag count all the votes.
Right, exactly. And also, they are still waiting on a judge to figure out whether or not the Nelson people are challenging the exact match law where your signature on the provisional ballot has to match your signature on your voter registration. And Mr. Elias also says that he doesn't like the fact that non-experts are judging whether or not it is a match. He has said we have seen states have significant match laws struck down as unconstitutional. So he's suggesting probably unconstitutional in Florida as well.
And I think part of the fun of voting and having your voice heard is finding out on election night. We all stay up really late to see what these votes, when they come in and when these races are called. If you aren't, or you're still counting votes after 10 days, and I understand if it's super close, you have to do that. And it is down there. But if you're still counting votes, if they change it for going forward, we're still counting ballots 10 days after, it kind of takes the fun out of election night,
well, I'm willing to take the fun out to get it right, though, Ainsley, right?
Well, I
and we just go back to election day being election day.
Ultimately, though, the reason the Scott people had a problem was because they've insinuated that a whole bunch of extra ballots have come in after the voting stopped. You know, there have been all sorts of stories, although yesterday one of the judges, when they threw out Mr. Scott's request to impound the machines, he said, you know, you guys are talking about all this voter fraud. If you've got any evidence of voter fraud, let's see it. Here's Rush Limbaugh on all of this.
Count every vote is a dog whistle for we need to find more votes, not votes that have been cast. The effort here is to make it look like Rick Scott and DeSantis and the Republicans are trying to not count ballots. That's the purpose of this. Count every vote is not really a requirement. It is meant for the media to use that as a psychological message to the great unwashed that somebody's trying to not count every vote. And, of course, who's standing for this and calling for it? Why, our good friends, the Democrats, when in fact it's all caca. Count every vote is nothing more than a trick to make people think dastardly, evil Republicans are not counting every vote.
Well, it is curious why 65 counties got it right, and these 2 counties that they're Democratic counties, right?
Yep.
Aren't they Democratic?
Yes.
Okay, so why these Democratic counties, they're not happy with he's saying they're not happy with the votes, and so they want to find new votes.
And look, for example, the headline in the New York Times is almost if they're cheerleading for whatever candidate wants the recount. For example, here's it does say news analysis, but Maggie Haberman and Jeremy Peters have this story: GOP fears over Senate edge drive push to discredit recount. So you can't possibly actually want a justification with Scott with a 14,000 vote lead, which was once 60,000. You can't do that if for legitimate purposes. It has to be because the GOP has to discredit you. They have an objective there.
The Washington Post headline: Republicans fan unfounded worries about voter fraud in close races, as you can see in the middle. And then screen right, Huffington Post: Republicans are casting doubt on normal election processes for the sake of winning.
Well, really, with the Brian Kemp, Georgia situation, now they're going over the judges extending till Friday, even though he's got a 50,000 vote lead in the governor's race. I don't understand.
And he says mathematically she can't win.
Yeah.
They get to figure it out at the local level. And that's what they're doing.
And well, in Arizona, did you see Republicans protesting? No. Martha McSally last night had a lead on Election Day. It slowly turned into a 36,000 vote deficit, and last night she conceded.
Yeah.
Because of the incoming provisional ballots. And in Arizona, it made a difference. Will it make any difference in Florida? Don't know.
All right, let's hand it over to Jillian, who has some more headlines for us. Hey, Jillian.
That's right. Good morning. We continue to follow the story out of California. Tragic wildfire still burning now. So we have this Fox News alert. The Camp Fire in Northern California is now the deadliest and most destructive wildfire in state history. 42 people killed and nearly 6,500 homes have been destroyed. Officials now looking into whether faulty power lines are to blame. President Trump approving an expedited disaster declaration as crews work against dry and windy conditions, fueling flames around the state. We have a live report on the wildfires later this hour. Opening arguments start today in the trial for Mexican drug lord El Chapo. He's facing 17 charges, including drug trafficking, murder conspiracy, and money laundering. The trial could take 4 months and is expected to shed light on his jailbreaks, use of submarines to ship drugs, and his iconic gold-plated AK-47. El Chapo will be escorted by armed guards to and from court in New York City. A community pays tribute to a fallen American hero with a 400-pound American flag. Just look at this. Major Brent Taylor's Gold Star wife says it's a comfort.
To see that banner flying is something of a deep honor and just a remembrance of this wonderful land that we live in. And also it's quite a humbling reminder that unfortunately our family's not the first to go through this.
Taylor was shot and killed in Afghanistan while on leave from his post as the mayor of North Ogden, Utah. More than 150 volunteers hiked nearly 2 miles up a canyon trail to fly the flag in Taylor's honor. You look at that image is beautiful.
It's
that gives you chills, doesn't it?
Oh.
Isn't that beautiful?
And he left behind 7 children.
How is it flying? Is it attached to the side of the cliff and then?
I don't know.
They're holding on to it.
Yeah.
Oh, they're holding on.
It is 150 feet long.
Wow.
All right, thanks, Jillian. 13 minutes after the hour, New Florida recount is bringing back memories of what happened back in 2000. One Army vet says his vote in that election was stolen, and Brenda Snipes covered it up. Yeah, the same Brenda Snipes. He joins us live to explain.
And one woman goes out of her marriage with a bang. We're going to explain what she did.
Right, their whole family was supportive of it.
Her dad and her brother had the idea.
How much do you know about this, Ainsley?
Some chaos in Florida as a massive vote count is underway, and it seems eerily familiar to the infamous 2000 presidential recount. Our next guest voted by absentee ballot in that election while serving in the Army and says Broward County stole his vote and Brenda Snipes covered it up. Joining us right now, retired U.S. Army Colonel Dave Lowry joins us now to explain. Colonel, thank you very much for joining us today from Jacksonville.
Great to be with you this morning, Steve.
Thank you. All right, so during the 2000 presidential election, you voted absentee ballot, and you sent it back via UPS so you would have a date stamp. And what happened to your vote?
Well, UPS records prove it was delivered on time. However, Broward County fraudulently stamped it as received on November 16th, 9 days after the election deadline.
Why'd they do that?
I have no idea. And in fact, I never even know about it. If it weren't from a call from Chris Drew from the New York Times 7 months after the election, he's the one who told me that my name was on a list of thousands of Florida voters whose ballots had not been counted.
I don't get why they wouldn't count it. It was there on the day, on actual election day. It was stamped. Somebody named Benson received it. I just don't get why they did that. Ultimately, you feel, though, that your vote was stolen, don't you?
Well, I was stunned by the revelation when Chris Drew called me. So the next couple of years, I tried to figure out what happened. Unfortunately, the Broward County Supervisor of Elections office thwarted me at every turn. They delayed and stonewalled for 18 months until the statute of limitations expired.
Right. And then they said, you're right, there was a problem. You feel that Brenda Snipes, who was Board of Supervisors then, she should be removed from this job after the recount, right?
Miriam Oliphant was the supervisor of elections back then, and she was removed by former Governor Jeb Bush for incompetence and mismanagement. So I think this is just a symptom. It's been going on for decades, and it needs to stop. I don't think Rick Scott can remove her because his hands are tied.
Right.
He has a conflict of interest, but I think Governor Jeb Bush said it right in a tweet the other day. She needs to be removed from office after the recount.
Well, a lot of people are saying that. Let's see what happens. Dave Lowry, retired colonel, 30-year Army vet. Sir, thank you very much for your service.
Could I make one more point real quick, Steve?
Super fast.
Super fast. American voters, please, if you use an absentee ballot or a mail-in ballot, please don't use regular mail. Use a system that has a track. Use certified mail.
Right.
It tracks it.
So that you know exactly when it was delivered. A great point.
That's how I won my case.
All right. Dave, thank you very much for putting that in. All right.
Thanks,
We're going to step
Steve.
aside. More Fox and Friends in 2 minutes. And men say they would like to make in their dream job, according to a new survey. Women say they'd be happy with $278,000. That's what makes people happy. Next, $100. That's how much a new monthly pass costs to get inside the Golden State Warriors games. But it doesn't come with a seat. Inside the arena, fans have to watch from the stadium's bars and the restaurants as well. And finally, 76 years. That's how long it took that World War II and Korean War veteran to graduate high school. 93-year-old Sam Stansel received his diploma from his Tennessee high school after dropping out in 1942 to serve the U.S. of A. And that is some of your news by the numbers.
That was some great walking.
Good job.
Meanwhile, 25 minutes after the hour, after a weekend full of meetings with world leaders in France, President Trump returned home with a message for our European allies. Pay the United States for protection or protect yourself.
In a series of tweets, the president said, in part, massive amounts of money spent on protecting other countries, and we get nothing but trade deficits and losses. It is time that these very rich countries either pay the United States for its great military protection or protect themselves, and trade must be made free and fair. Here to react is retired U.S. Marine Corps bomb technician Joey Jones, who lost both of his legs while serving our amazing country over in Afghanistan. Thank you for your service and for joining us, Joey. What was your reaction to the president's tweet?
Thank you and good morning. I like it. I'm glad that we finally have a president that's challenging some of these antiquated arrangements we have. Provided a few exceptions, most of the arrangements we have are as much for our own strategic advantage as they are the security of that host country. For example, in Japan, we actually pay to be there. They don't pay us, we pay them to use the bases we have there. But there's no secret that Afghanistan is as much a pivotal strategic place as the south of France or the Pacific Islands were 60, 70 years ago. So we need to relook at these things and take a look at why we are where we are. It's no secret that our wars are now fought in the minds of people that are radical terrorists as much as it ever was in Southern Europe or in some of these other places. So to say that, you know, we shouldn't just be there because we're there and we've always been there is a good way to look at it. And I think that these countries need to understand that when these advantages start drying up, like intelligence gathering or securing trade opportunities, we lose reasons to really want to be there.
Joey, I'm outraged what Macron did over the weekend. Look, he's sitting there making a speech telling us that nationalism is the opposite of patriotism. Don't worry about us and nationalism. We're bailing them out. That's what I learned over 100 years of war and World War II, and then followed up by World War I, followed up by World War II. Number two is he's sitting there. He wants to put a European force together. Go ahead and do it. Why would that be a threat to us? But the problem is they can't do that. They don't want to spend any money on their defense.
Yeah, let me tell Macron something. Listen, America is the greatest country in the world, and it's not just rhetoric, it's true. And let me explain to you why. It's not because of the power of our military, our riches, or even our system of government. It's because we're the only place in the world where we all look different, yet we love each other anyway. When someone falls down, we pick them back up. The things that we believe in this country are that this is hard to do, yet we're doing it. Freedoms are inherently dangerous, but they're worth it. And so before you point a finger at us and anything along the lines of calling us a villain, you need to understand that we exist because you all couldn't get it right. We exist because of monarchies and totalitarian governments in Europe. We exist because we believe in being free regardless of what you look like, where you pray, who you love, or where you eat. We exist because we choose to. That's something that's very special, and they should continue learning from that before pointing fingers at us.
Because of men and women like you, Joey. This is what the president just tweeted out 37 minutes ago. Emmanuel Macron suggests building its own army to protect Europe against the U.S., China, and Russia. But it was Germany in World Wars I and II. How did that work out for France? They were standing to learn German in Paris. Starting to learn German in Paris before the U.S. came along. Pay for NATO or not. Your thoughts?
Listen, the French military has been a friend of ours and an integral part of why we are here today. But we've pulled our part. We rescued France from Nazis. So we have a tight relationship over hundreds of years. And to have a president in either country challenging that doesn't make a lot of sense. Right. So I think that Macron needs to understand that we've been a partner and one that France inherently needs.
Yeah, by the way, we probably don't win the Revolutionary War without France, so we get it. The big picture, he's got 26% approval rating. He thought he'd pick up a few points by beating up on President Trump. For me, it blows up in his face. Joey Jones, thanks so much.
Thanks, Joey.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You're welcome. A terrifying dark red sky covering parts of California this morning as deadly wildfires carve a path of destruction out there. We are live on the ground coming up next.
And what is the White House saying about the massive recount underway in Florida right now? We're going to ask Senior Communication Advisor Mercedes Schlapp that, and then we assume she'll answer.
We are back with a Fox News alert. The Camp Fire in Northern California is now the deadliest and most destructive wildfire in that state's history.
More than 40 people are killed as the president approves a disaster declaration.
Ray Bogan is live outside Camarillo Airport near Los Angeles as dry and windy conditions fuel the flames all around the state. Ray?
Steve, Brian, and Ainsley, good morning to you. We're at the Incident Command Center for the Woolsey and Hill fires, where in just a matter of hours, hundreds of firefighters will arrive to get their morning briefing as they start a 24-hour shift. In the meantime, some of them are here sleeping in tents. One man is even sleeping on the ground in a sleeping bag. Now, investigators in Northern California are looking into whether sparking PG&E power lines may have caused the Camp Fire, which, as you mentioned, has now become the deadliest and most destructive in California history. 42 people have died. They've been found in their homes and cars as they were trying to escape. At last update, it was 30% contained, and CAL FIRE doesn't expect to have full containment for another week. Nearly 6,500 homes have been destroyed, including those of firefighters and their families.
It's just absolutely heartbreaking to drive through Paradise and see the level of destruction. My family lost their home in the fire. My parents did. My grandmother did.
Here in Southern California, the Woolsey fire at last update was 93,000 acres and 30% contained. Firefighters estimate more than 400 buildings have been destroyed. In both fires, crews are working against dry, windy conditions and steep terrain. But California is getting help. President Trump has approved a major disaster declaration, tweeting in part, wanted to respond quickly in order to alleviate some of the incredible suffering going on. I am with you all the way. Meantime, CAL FIRE is thanking their partners that have arrived from 17 states, including as far away as Alaska and Georgia. Steve, Brian, and Ainsley, back to you.
It's all hands on deck. All right, Ray, thank you very much. Live report from California.
Take a look at this photo showing exhausted firefighters napping there on the ground after working 24-hour shifts.
It was taken last year in California, but it's now going viral as people share their applications for the firefighters battling the blazes around the state.
Yep. Meteorologist Janice Dean is live in studio tracking those fires. Hey, Janice.
It's hard to see that.
Your husband's a firefighter.
He is, and you know, he is a New York City firefighter, but the firefighters that are doing the work out there in California, they are risking their lives. It's a different beast when you are battling wildfires that in some cases have no control. So our hearts and prayers out to all those wonderful firefighters who are risking their lives to save others in this incredibly dangerous situation. Let's take a look at the fire weather outlook today. Another day of critical to extreme fire danger across Southern California. That's where we have our Santa Ana winds. Right now, we're seeing wind gusts around 17 miles per hour for Van Nuys, starting to see those wind gusts in excess of 10 to 15 miles per hour coming through those valleys and canyons, unfortunately. And we could see wind gusts in excess of 70 miles per hour again today. So the threat is going to be dire for this afternoon. Overnight tonight, they will start to die down a little bit on Wednesday. But look, we've got no rain in the forecast here. So the conditions are dry. Relative humidity is very low. And unfortunately, those wildfires are going to continue to burn out of control, especially in Southern California. There's the past 12 hours across the area. No rain in the forecast. And then taking a look at where we are seeing the rain across the southeast, the Ohio Valley, the northeast. This is where we could see the potential for some wintry weather, not only today, but through the work week. All right, back to you guys.
If they only had our rain on the other coast.
I know.
Okay.
Nonstop here. Meanwhile, 36 minutes after the hour, Jillian, you have other news, including that migrant caravan.
That's right. The migrant caravan with over 3,500 people is inching closer to the U.S. border. The group reaching the city of Guadalajara by hopping on trucks and cars. Officials say their intended destination is San Diego. U.S. Sector Chief Manuel Padilla Jr. of Texas joined us earlier to explain how troops and border agents are preparing.
What we are shooting for is an orderly situation. We will not tolerate the crowds, the type of chaos that you saw in southern Mexico. That is not going to happen.
It's the U.S. border in 2 weeks. Some midterm races have yet to be called, but that's not stopping the field of Democratic hopefuls for 2020. Failed congressional candidate Richard Ojeda, who lost his 2018 bid in West Virginia, announcing he's running for president. And this week, vocal anti-Trumper Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell had this to say.
I know you were in Iowa this weekend. You're running for president?
Very well received there. They want new energy, new ideas, and a new confidence. And that really, I think, emboldened me to make a decision soon.
More than 36 Democrats have floated the idea of taking on President Trump in 2020. Let's look at your headlines, so stay tuned for
look
more
at
news
that.
on that.
There's not enough stage.
It looks like the Republicans a few years ago. There were 17 candidates.
Double.
Right.
Meanwhile, Mercedes slapped us all about what it's like to have 24 people run for the White House because they went to CPAC and you guys were there running
Yeah,
that.
that's right.
So your strategic communications now at the White House. Mercedes, this morning, the president tweeted out just about Macron and some of the blowback from his trip overseas. How would you characterize from the insider perspective how that went?
Well, it was clearly a successful trip. The president, along with Macron, had a productive meeting. They spoke about trade. They spoke about NATO. As we know, the president has talked about many times the importance of sharing the burden of paying for NATO. Yep. And the U.S. has always paid more than these other nations. And so he has sent a strong message to our European allies. And we have seen some changes and some positive shifts coming from our allies to pay more to NATO. We need their support.
We do. All right, Mercedes, let's talk a little bit about what's happening here in the United States. Down in Florida, all eyes are on the counting, the recounting. Does the White House have confidence that what is happening down south is fair?
Well, we have confidence that Rick Scott will be the next Florida senator. He's leading now by 12,000 votes, and that's going to be a hard gap to close. And so I think we've already seen with the Broward County supervisor that there have been voting irregularities for nearly 2 decades. And so, again, they've missed court deadlines, and I think we're going to get to a point where we're going to see Rick Scott coming over to Washington to be the next Florida senator.
Today? I think he was talking about
this is a process. I mean, they have to finish up the process. But I think there's been a lot of criticism with how Broward County has handled these ballots. And it's, look, I remember the days. My husband was down there. I was down there in Florida during the Bush v. Gore recount, and that was a lot closer. This is 12,000 votes we're talking about. That's a big gap to close.
Whose responsibility is it now to fix what's going on down there? Because it's shocking that 65 counties can get it right, and these 2 counties continuously get it wrong.
No kidding. I mean, that is a state function, and so that's why you have the Secretary of State who would handle that in these variety of states.
One of the things the president tweeted out yesterday was that there was, I think it was something about fraud or these, suspicious ballots showing up. Has there been any evidence of that?
I think this is primarily a state responsibility. The federal government does provide support. I know through the Secretary of Homeland Security that they spent a lot of time working on election security to make sure our infrastructure would be safe, so there wouldn't be any outside meddling. There's always concern about voter fraud. And so I think the key is obviously that in conjunction with state working with the federal government to make sure that this doesn't happen. But we always have to keep an eye on it because one of the greatest rights that we have and privileges is that of voting. And we need to ensure voter integrity at the state and local and federal level.
Do you look at the win by Kristen Sinema in Arizona to grab a seat from Republicans as legitimate?
Yes, I mean, I think at this point what we're seeing is that, again, there's a huge gap there in terms of Senate-elect Sinema basically gaining ground and really making sure that gap had widened. So at this point, it looks like Arizona, she seems to have won that race. And again, one of the things President Trump has talked about is bipartisanship and working with Democrats.
All right. And it looks like Mr. Whitaker, the acting AG, could face a court challenge today because he was appointed illegally. The White House stands behind him 100%, right?
No question. The president and the Department of Justice leadership has confidence in Matt Whitaker. Matt Whitaker, look, he has a full and legal authority under the Vacancy Reform Act of 1998, where if it's someone that's been a senior official as well as has been there for more than 90 days, could serve as acting attorney general. All right. Mercedes Schlapp joined us from the North Lawn. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mercedes.
Thank you so much.
Good to see you.
All right. Well, from the White House to your house, I'm making Mrs. Ducey and I are continuing our book tour. We're going to stop by one more set of bookstores this weekend, signing copies, taking pictures down in Florida. We're going to be at Books A Million in Orange Park Mall Friday at 7 p.m., Barnes & Noble Colonial Park Mall in Orlando Saturday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and Sunday Barnes & Noble in Palm Beach Gardens at 1 o'clock. We know a lot of you are buying it as a holiday gift. So if you're not in Florida, go ahead and pick it up wherever you buy books, Barnes & Noble or Amazon or anything like that. Great recipes for Thanksgiving.
This is an great gift for Christmas.
Extended tour by popular demand.
That's right.
He said he was done and they pulled you back in.
Number one on the New York Times bestseller list.
Thanks to all of you.
Right.
Anyway.
Meanwhile, all right, so Steve Stephen, Florida over the weekend. 17 minutes before the top of the hour. Now this. Violence erupting in the Middle East overnight as tensions between Israel and Hamas reach a boiling point. We are live in Israel. Is war next?
More ballot drama is brewing in the Sunshine State.
Since election night, nearly 100,000 uncounted votes have just magically turned up.
It's easy to see how people outside of Florida can look at this and say, nobody can be this stupid. There must be something nefarious going on here.
Multiple fast-moving wildfires on both control.
Death toll at 42. Wildfire in California.
Caravan of migrants continues inching closer to our border at this very moment.
That is an assault on the national integrity of the United States of America.
So new reports suggest that Democrats are getting ready to fire 85 subpoenas that cover pretty much every aspect of the Trump presidency.
They believe
that they have a mandate from their base to attack the president.
Comic book legend Stan Lee has died.
Best known as the creator of the Marvel Universe, this guy had such an incredibly interesting life.
Family.
When you leave your home today, if you're in the Northeast, pack a slicker.
Pack an
and
umbrella,
Bring
yeah.
an umbrella because it is pouring. It is what we used to call in Kansas a frog strangler out there.
Right.
What does that mean?
Frogs look up, their mouth goes open,
and they die?
Well, I don't know that actually happened, but it was a figure of speech.
Well, all I would say is it bragging to say that Philip Phillips, sang this song on our show?
He did.
Right. Is it bragging?
Well,
you like to brag about that. And you like to brag about the fact that you made them all famous. This morning, I was watching Fox and Friends First with Heather, and they played Imagine Dragons song. And I thought, Brian wants to know how many people are in the band. You probably made them famous.
Right.
And then I heard them say, it's raining here in New York, and I packed my umbrella because of our coverage.
We've come full circle. Anyway, thank you very much for joining us on this very busy, damp Tuesday in New York City. But let's now look at the sunshine state of Florida, because this morning, more ballot drama is brewing down south.
Yeah, they worked through the night. I don't know if they're getting anything done, though. The statewide recounting is in full swing, but officials in Florida's largest counties are scrambling. We put that in bold in the prompter for a reason, because they better hurry up.
I think they're still trying to remove those first pages. They haven't even started the recount yet, if I'm correct. Let me ask. In Broward County, that is. Griff Jenkins is live in that county at the Office of Elections. Griff, have they started that recount yet, or are they still trying to take off those first pages?
Good morning, guys. They still have not started the recount. They're just separating that first page. They're at the end of the alphabet around letter X of the mail of the voting day. They did the early voting. Now they're doing the electoral day. They've still got to do the vote by mails. And let's take you in that room now, because this video is now more compelling than watching eagles, giraffes, or pandas at the zoo. They are separating these pages. They've got to do the vote by mail after this. That's going to take a couple of hours. Then we're likely going to have a calibration of these machines before the actual tabulation begins. But yesterday, we had a moment in the afternoon that really caught us by surprise, and that is the supervisor here of elections, Dr. Brenda Snipes, who is at the center of this firestorm, actually talked to the media and addressed the mistakes that she's made. Here is some of what she had to say.
The lawsuits as they are written certainly cast aspersions on my character. I've worked here for about 15 years, and I have to say this is the first time that this office or I have been under such attacks. So if we make mistakes, we own mistakes.
And a surprising tweet from former Governor Jeb Bush yesterday saying that for him, there was no question Snipes failed to comply with the law on multiple counts, and he called for her to be removed after the recounts. Meanwhile, on the national level, candidates Senator Nelson and Governor Scott just trading barbs at each other. Listen to this.
Scott cannot oversee this process in a fair and impartial way, and thus he should remove himself from any role in the recount process.
My goal is that we follow the law. We know Brenda Snipes mixed illegal ballots with legal ballots. We know they've not let party officials in. The courts have said follow the law.
So here's where we stand. They've still got to finish the recount, which hasn't started yet. We expect that around 9, and the deadline is Thursday to get that done. The lawyers here believe that margin of error is going to be under that 0.25% point, so we're actually going to have a hand recount. We also know north of us, the other county having trouble. In Palm Beach County yesterday, the election supervisor, Susan Booker, saying that she finds it impossible to get the recount done on time. When you ask the lawyers here what happens if they don't get the recount done on time, that's an open question, but we'll certainly have legal challenges, guys.
Griff, I never seen this Palm Beach County people. They go, they didn't even seem to try. They knew they couldn't do it. The other thing is it true when they do the hand vote, it's just going to be overvote and undervote, not every vote, correct?
That's correct. Here in Broward County, Brian, there's about 714,000 ballots cast, they believe. Of those, they estimate some 55,000 maybe over and under votes. But at that point, I'll be coming to you live from a warehouse where we'll see table after table set up of volunteers and lawyers looking over every single one of those over or under votes, meaning that they either didn't mark any answer on the question or they marked too many answers on the question. And at that point, they'll try and determine the intent of that voter. That's going to be time consuming. Ultimately, we have the deadline of Sunday for the official vote to be logged in there. We'll see if we make that.
Griff, why the problems in those two counties? And it's not the first time we've seen it in that area. When 60 plus other counties in the state of Florida got it right, why didn't these two counties, why weren't they prepared?
Great question. 65 of 67 counties got their act together. These two traditionally have failed to meet deadlines and have had numerous problems, and that's why you have people like Governor Jeb Bush calling for Snipes' removal. Right. It's important to note that it was Governor Bush in 2003 that removed Snipes' predecessor, a woman named Oliphant, who was in clear violation of rules and failing to meet deadlines. He appointed Snipes as a solution to the problem. She now is clearly becoming the problem.
All right, Griff, thank you very much. By the way, I just was looking in the Palm Beach Post, and according to coverage this morning, the Board of Supervisors there, after yesterday saying, we can't make it, now they feel they can make it regarding the Senate race.